Hello, everyone. I am Charlie Tolhurst, and welcome to the Globetrotter Newscast for today, the 11th of April. And welcome everyone to this podcast this evening. We're going to be talking all about the latest news from the world, or from around the world, should I say. I'm joined by Labour supporter Zach Chambers to round up this week's headlines. Hello, Zach.
Hi, hello, Charlie. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Now, Zach, I want to start this podcast off, if I may, by paying tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, who sadly passed away on Friday at the age of 99. Now, this man was a kind-hearted gentleman who was an inspiration to our country during his 99 of existence. And Zach, could I just say, Prince Philip was the man that brought this country together when it needed it most. Could you explain to listeners exactly what your tributes are right now to the Duke of Edinburgh?
Well done, Charlie. I think that's the perfect way to explain it. I'm same with you as well. Prince Philip, charming man, great individual, did proud to his country and to our services. I mean, you look at what he's achieved over the years, and I know he stepped down as a full-time royal member a few years ago, but nevertheless, the Queen obviously is grieving because she has been with him for about 70 years, all the way when the Queen was first became the Queen, and you just look at the service that Prince Philip gave. I know he was a cadet for the Royal Naval College in Dartmouth. We saw the gun salute there. He served in the British forces during World War II, and he spent in battle on HMS Ramillies. He was transferred to the Indian Ocean. And he did lots of things. He fought us for the war. He's been around the world. He's served the royals very, very well, and he's been through so much. He has been through some controversies, but nevertheless, he's been there. He's brought a bit of pride to the people that have been with him. He's touched well with the public. And he has been in hospitals a couple of times. He did survive them. Unfortunately, we don't know what caused this death this time round. We won't know. But he did his service to his country proud and to the Commonwealth. And many people are certainly going to miss him, Charlie, including me. And I'm sure many others as well.
It's a huge loss, isn't it, to the whole of the UK? I mean, I saw a lot of channels suspended broadcasting the other day just to pay tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh. And it's a huge loss for the whole country, if not the whole world, because look what he's done during his entire existence. So Prince Philip, RIP, my friend, you will be remembered. And also, just to confirm as well, next Saturday there will be a funeral which will be held at 3:00 for the Prince, for the Duke of Edinburgh. Prince Philip. Please, guys, pay your respects to this incredible gentleman. He is such an icon. 99 years old he was when he sadly passed away on Friday. He's such an icon. So we're going to move on now from Prince Philip to the big news of the week, Zach. And COVID-19 is the first segment we're doing today. Vaccines dominating the week. And there's been two vaccines that have been spoken about this week, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and also the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And there's been a lot of controversy over blood clots. Do these vaccines actually cause blood clots? And Zach, what is your view on the two media briefings that were conducted this week by the MHRA and also out in the States as well on these vaccines?
So there's been a bit of a panic this week, Charlie, with vaccines. And now there's been some discussion whether this is a scaremongering or not. I don't think it's scaremongering, but I think it's quite serious. But it's useful to get this out here. Basically, what's happened, Charlie, is that there is a possible link, there's a bigger evidence of a link now between the AstraZeneca vaccine and the possible cause of rare blood clots. Now, this is very rare, Charlie. I should point out this has been very rare. You have just as much chance of getting a blood clot as being straight lightning. So if you think about it, the actual chances of a blood clot are, well, 1 in 400,000, should I say? I don't know if that's the official figure, but that's what's been explained, really. You know, I think it's interesting. It just shows you out of 30 or so million that they're only a certain amount, like 70, have got blood clots. I mean, yes, there's been a few people who died, unfortunately, which is very sad. Very sad. I don't want them to die, but yeah, it's safe. It is extremely safe. There's not much really to be worried about. I mean, now we did have this week the EHMRA recommend, and I should point out very carefully the wording on this, Charlie, recommend that anyone under 30 should take an alternative vaccine. Now, recommend doesn't mean suspend for under 30s. It just means that the first preference would either be Pfizer or Moderna at this rate.
Yeah.
Instead of Oxford and AstraZeneca. Now, that poses a problem. So someone like me, Charlie, as you probably are aware of me speaking to you about this, like, I've already had the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine in February.
Same here as well. I've had that one. I've had that one as well.
Yeah. Now, this obviously creates. I think people will think, "Oh, what happens then?" Well, the understanding is that if you've had your first Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine within the new guidelines now, you should still take your second jab. And I will take my second jab, Charlie, because as I said, the risk of actually getting rare blood clots is just as much as being struck by lightning. So yeah, it's rather unfortunate, and no vaccine is 100% perfect. There's always a risk, and you have to do you have to jab millions and millions and millions of people to see whether there is a link to this. But yeah, it's very rare. People should still take their second doses, and what I hope this doesn't do is reduce the vaccine. The confidence people could be
the uptake of the vaccine.
I'm not. I haven't been less disconfidence from this. I just think it was a use of information. Now, Johnson & Johnson, on the other hand, there has been a link with potential blood clots there as well on the Johnson & Johnson one. And I should point out as well, Pfizer has these blood clots as well. Obviously, there hasn't been evidence here in the UK. There's been some in Europe, but that never got reported on as much as this. So, in all seriousness, there's always going to be some sort of little side effect in the vaccine, but they're not that regular. They're very rare. The people who get this are going to be very unlucky, but you should take the vaccine. The benefits outweigh the risks. And there's nothing stopping you from taking the vaccine. And I said before, Charlie, as well, in terms of the wording on the Oxford AstraZeneca for under 30s is crucial, because it says recommend that they take an alternative vaccine. Now, what that means is that it's not banned for under 30s. Oxford vaccine is not banned for under 30s. If necessary, you can take the Oxford vaccine, but just as a precaution, it's recommended that you get Pfizer or Moderna, or those are the two at the moment. But that's where we are. It's nothing more than just a little tiny warning, but nothing more than that. It's nothing really in terms of seriousness. We have to alert people when this happens, obviously, but at the end of the day, I hope this is going to do vaccine confidently. It's still going to work for this.
I mean, Zach, yes, Jonathan Van Tam, the chief medical officer for England, updated everyone on Wednesday, I think, or Wednesday.
Yeah.
Thursday last. It was last British people on the vaccine as well, saying that it's still safe. We want people to take it, and this is the only route back to normal. Obviously, the Johnson & Johnson one, haven't heard as much about it. I did hear that it could be Colorado, where I think some of these blood clots have happened. But what I heard from a relative, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
the Johnson & Johnson one, Zach, is the single shot one, isn't it? That's the one you only need to have one dose.
Yeah, that's correct.
I I heard that's going to potentially be approved in the UK. Could that help bolster our vaccine rollout potentially?
Yes, and the thing is about it, Charlie, as well, is that if Johnson & Johnson gets approved, then I think it will be clearly targeted at younger people who could feel like they're saying, well, I'm very healthy, I don't need the vaccine. But no, you should still take the vaccine anyway. If you're young, you're healthy, you don't want to be one of these long COVID where you have all these health problems down the line and all that sort of thing. So yeah, Johnson & Johnson, I think if it does get approved here, will be targeted very much at the young, because you don't have to go around for second appointments. All you would need is one shot, and then you would be protected from COVID-19, or get a sufficient amount of protection. So yeah, I think that'll be definitely on its way. Maybe we'll get our first batches if we do get approved. Maybe we'll get it in, maybe June or July time, something like that, where we're going down the age cohort. But yeah, I think this will be Johnson & Johnson will definitely be targeting the young people when needs be, and hopefully it will increase vaccine uptick on that, because the young people really do need to take this vaccine. This is where the target's going to be when we get through all the age groups, and when we get to the under 30s, under 20s, and that sort of thing. This is where we're going to really target,
Yeah, definitely.
getting people the vaccine, because that Johnson & Johnson probably would help with that as well.
I mean, there's going to be anti-vaxxers out there, without a doubt. You're going to have people that are going to refuse to take it, but the anti-vaxxers need to grow up and listen to the scientists and say, look, these vaccines are safe, and they need to be protected. So it's really important, guys. Take your vaccine, please. It is so important. Vaccines do actually save lives. They stop people going to hospital and dying. This is how we're going ahead with easing the lockdown. From tomorrow in England, massive easing, Zach, of the restrictions Boris Johnson announced on Monday last week.
Yeah. So yes. So this will be a big reopening of the UK. Let me just show you. What's going to happen. So stage 3, I think this is. This will include outdoor hospitality in the UK. Outdoor hospitality, so the pubs, bars, gyms, leisure centres,
non-essential retail as well, just to confirm.
Non-essential retail as well. So yes, those are going to be the ones that are opening. Theme parks, outdoor theme parks, all that thing, zoos, all going to be
holiday lets
reopening. Yeah, holidays lets as well. That's what's going to happen across the UK. This is not in a phased-in approach. There will be there won't be the usual curfews, but there will be a few measures, Charlie, to for people to quiet them in. They must order, eat, and drink whilst at the table. That's happened last time. The rule of 6 will actually apply to this, to what's going to happen here. Yeah. So rule of 6: any customer aged 16 or over will have to check in with the NHS Test and Trace app or give contact details to staff. That's important. That's just so that if there is a COVID outbreak, that that you could be tracked and traced if needed to be. You need to wear face masks when not seated and observe social distancing. There's no more curfews or anything like that, Charlie. That's the thing. There's no more curfew, so that pubs can open as long as they need to be.
Yeah, they don't have to shut at 10 o'clock, don't they?
Yeah, that's the situation at the moment involving pubs and restaurants, and that it's outdoors at the moment, Charlie. So that means it's in the fresh air. That means you're less likely to get COVID within the fresh air compared to being indoors, where you need a lot of ventilation to come in. So that's why outdoors been opened first. And so that's going to be happening tomorrow. And I believe, if I'm correct in saying, I think it's the weddings and funeral limits going to be lifted up again a little bit. So 15
I think it's up to 15 people, isn't it? I was at 30, up to 30 people. Wow. So double 15. It's a lot more. I think it's about 15, I think, or it's very limited at the moment. So
something like that. It might be this phase or the next phase. Yeah.
As well, can I also just warn the British public whilst I'm here, if any of you are watching the Globetrotter Newscast live on YouTube and Facebook tonight, you will know that if you are heading to a gym or particularly heading to a holiday let, please note that you can only go with your household or support bubble. This doesn't apply with other, with either the rule of 6 or 2 households, because that is sadly at the moment you are not allowed to mix with them indoors. I thought I'd just
that's very
update
important.
you on that rule as well. And also on that subject, this is step 2 of the roadmap as well. There are 4 steps of the roadmap. Step 2 is happening tomorrow. Step 3 will happen no earlier than the 17th of May. And step 4 will happen no earlier than the 21st of June. So we'll keep an eye out on the roadmap. And we'll update you on what's been happening on that. But it's going to be a big reopening of the economy tomorrow. Please, if you're out there, stay safe. And also, Zach, as well, in schools, there is going to be the same guidance applies to face coverings in the classroom, doesn't it?
Yes, I think so. I think that's currently the case. So I think that will how it works. I don't see anything different in terms of face coverings or anything like that. It's going to be the same as well. So So I think, I don't.
Yes, we have a tweet here from the Department for Health of Education. There is a website link that says on here that staff, pupils, and students in secondary schools and colleges are advised to continue wearing face coverings in classrooms in England as an extra precaution, and this will be reviewed, I believe, just before the 17th of May, planning on some changes on that. Well, again, we'll keep you updated on all that guidance. So for some people, this isn't going to be a great move, but I know that it is essential if we want to slow the spread of the virus down, especially in classrooms where social distancing is quite difficult. So we're going to move on now from COVID-19 to motorsport now, Zach. Formula E was on today and yesterday. 2 different winners. We had yesterday and John-Eric Vernon winning his first race of the season, and today Stoffel Van Dorn win. And Zach, it was a very chaotic weekend in Rome, including a huge crash in race 1 for the 2 Mercedes.
That what ended the race in race 1. The 2 Mercedes crashing and ended up ruining the race for basically. The leader broke down at the time, if I remember rightly, and took the Mercedes with
Lucas
them.
Di Grassi
and obviously
had a drive shaft.
Lucas Di Grassi had a drive shaft failure. Was in the lead and was on his way to victory actually. And then obviously a drive shaft failure out of nowhere meant he was tumbling down the order, and the Mercedes cars on race 1 hit the bump going around the left-hander just past the start-finish straight. And unfortunately, because of the bump, because of the way the car was speeding, both cars ended up in the wall. And I'm afraid it took out. It got taken out. So very, very unfortunate there for the Mercedes driver. But today's a different day, Charlie. And goodness me, what a turnaround it was for Stoffel Van Dorn, winning today's race. And in fact, he was coasting away at points. So apart from the late safety car at the end, but he did manage the good use of fan boost to keep on to his lead. It was a very chaotic weekend, as you said, Charlie. Very enjoyable one. 2 weeks' time, we're going to go to Valencia for 2 more races. And I believe more races are going to be confirmed after that. But yes, a very hectic weekend. I really enjoyed the track, Charlie. I have to say, it was nice and fast, wide parts. It was very good. And goodness me, I couldn't believe how close the field was in race 1. I mean, you had literally like the top 10 within like 5 seconds of each other. It was incredible. Yeah. It was really, really good. It was closer than what I imagined. And it resulted out in a very good race. Race weekend overall. I'm very impressed with it.
I think Zach's surprise of the weekend actually had to be the Envision Virgin Racing of Nick Cassidy. Because for the race 2, he actually secured his maiden pole position in
and then he kind of it was a disappointing race for him because he spun out. I don't know whether it was a software failure or something, but he spun out just 3 corners into lap 1, and then he didn't really recover. Then he got taken out in the next couple of corners, but I think by Sam Bird took him out. Something like that.
It was. I think it might have been either Sam Bird or Oliver Rowland. I think or Oliver Turner.
Oliver Rowland. Sorry, it was something like that. Yeah. But yeah, he got taken out. Rather unluckily for him because he started on pole. He could have had huge potential. He was ahead, and I have to admit, Charlie, it was bizarre they had to start behind the safety car both times. The race behind the safety car for both races. I found that extremely bizarre and a bit unnecessary, but. Nick Cassidy got a great start, race 2, but seemingly software failures took paid to that rather unfortunately, and then he got punted into the wall around the next couple of laps later as well, which is rather unfortunate, a bit of a shame really as well. Yeah.
I think as well, Zach, I've just got the standings up from race 2. Alexander Sims was second in the Mahindra. Pascal Wehrlein was third for Porsche. Now, Zach, Pascal Wehrlein had a difficult weekend, but I think race 2 he salvaged a podium, which was a good result for him because in race 1 he did actually have an incident with someone.
Yeah, race 2. I was watching just the race 2 today. He was on potential, could have won that race, but it just kept falling back from the top spot. He was at first at one point. He was coasting through his field, and then he just fell back and he struggled. And he finished in 4th, and it cost him a podium. Charlie, very unlucky. He didn't have the pace. He struggled a little bit out there, but he did finish 4th. Rather unfortunate for him as well. So yeah, a bit of a shame for him as well. Let's go through the rest of this, actually. Stoffel Van Dorn won the race today. Alexander Sims, very well done for him. Mahindra Racing, he's got to be much pleased.
Great result for Mahindra. Yeah. That's really, really good. Sims second, Wehrlein 4th, Mortara 4th. Wehrlein 3rd, Mortara 4th for Venturi. Good result for Venturi because they've struggled a lot all weekend.
And Norman Nato was originally on the podium, Charlie, but disqualifies, I think, for a battery overuse. I just read that. I know it was under investigation earlier, but he did actually get disqualified from 3rd because he was on the podium for Rocket Venturi. and got disqualified for power overuse, I believe, overuse as Charlie as well. Now, what happens with a power overuse is that you use the battery, Charlie, you to connect your charge at your battery. But what happens when you go over a bump is that battery spikes up and then goes over the limit. There's a certain limit of how much battery you can use within a race, Charlie. And unfortunately, went over a bump, he overused too much. So he ended up getting disqualified at the end of the day for overuse. It's in class, but it's necessary. So that meant Pascal Wehrlein actually finished third, Charlie. Extreme, he didn't actually get to be physically on the podium at the time, but he did finish third with Mortara fourth, Gunter fifth. Mitch Evans sixth, the Costa seventh, Blomqvist eighth, Muller ninth, and Sebastian Buemi top 10 as well. Someone who let me just go through the field. Someone who did struggle was Nick de Vries. Obviously, DNF
not a great
him,
weekend for de Vries. He struggled so much.
Rennie
Crashing race one.
And Sam Bird did have a good weekend up until today, where he unfortunately got crashed on the final lap, Charlie. It was a hectic last lap because they just finished behind. They just restarted one lap shootout behind the safety car. Everyone was slipping, really was slipping out of turn 3, I think it was. And they were struggling because there's bumps in the road. And one of them was Sam Bird, who took Nick de Vries with him as well. And rather unfortunate for him, took him out because after a good first race, actually, for
second place, I think. Was it second he finished? Or great result for him.
Yeah, he did great result. Great result for
both Jags on the podium as well, race one.
Yeah, second and third, Charlie. Very good race. Jaguar is much improved this season, I have to say. Really good team to watch as well. But yeah, so let's so where it reads, Charlie. So in terms of where we are in terms of the championship as
I've
well.
got the standings up here now. Bird leads on 43 points. Mitch Evans is now second on 39 points. Robin Freins is third on 34 points. Stoffel Van Dorn is up to fourth on 33 points. Nick de Vries is down to fifth after a difficult weekend in Rome. He's on 32. Pascal Wehrlein, sixth. Eduardo Mortara, seventh. John-Eric Verne's down to eighth after a difficult race 2. Alexander Sims, ninth. Antonio Felix da Costa. There's the top 10 in the championship. And I'll also update you on the teams championship as well. I believe, I'm just getting that up now.
Here we go.
Jaguar leading that one, 82 points. Mercedes are second on 65 points. So they are, if I can get my maths correct here, they are 17 points behind. And then a further 19 back are DS Tachita in third, who, of course, won race 1 with John-Eric Verne. Yeah, we've got the standings up there from Zach. Kindly just shared his screen on that one. Yeah, so that's the standings. Jaguar leading that one. Mercedes second. DS Tachita third. Envision Virgin Racing fourth. Tag Heuer Porsche fifth. Venturi sixth. Mahindra seventh. Audi 8th, difficult year for them. Nissan really struggling as well. And Dragon Penske Autosport down in last. Shame for Audi and Nissan because they've got a lot of work to do in order if they're going to get back into the championship. It's very clear.
That's rather very unlucky for them. Next race, as we said, Charlie, is going to be at Valencia. They're actually going to be racing not on a street circuit, but an actual circuit, which is very rare to be seen, Charlie.
Yeah.
They're going to be racing at the
Ricardo
Valencia.
Tomo, I think it's called.
Yes. They're going to do a race there. It's a technical circuit, tight corners, short straight, so it's going to be difficult to get overtaken done. But it'll be very. I'm looking forward to that one because it looks like an actual circuit this time round. But yes, definitely looking forward to it, Charlie.
That will be. It's going to. I'd say what, Zach. This is going to be a very exciting circuit coming up for Formula E. So that I believe I'm not sure when the next
It's 2
Formula E
weeks'
race is.
time.
Oh, 2
2 weeks'
weeks.
time,
Wow,
Charlie.
not long to wait. Not long to wait.
2
And that's
weeks.
good because that's the week after the Formula One action at Imola as well. So there will be plenty of motorsport coming up over the next few weeks. But we're going to move on from Formula E now to NASCAR. And the Blue Emu Maximum Pain Relief 500, I believe, is currently on right now.
It's on. It was got delayed, Charlie. Yes. It starts at 9 p.m. I believe, our UK time. It was on a rain delay yesterday. So was the Camping World Truck Series race because of rain affected the circuit. So rather unfortunately, there has been a rain delay, but they're planning to get underway at 4 p.m. today with the Cup Series race. As well. So yeah. So that will be at 4 p.m.
Yeah. The
US
Xfinity
time,
race
9 p.m.
was on
UK
earlier,
time.
I think. The Xfinity race.
Yeah, Xfinity race. Excuse me. I keep saying Camping World Truck Series race for whatever reason, but I mean it's Xfinity race. Do beg my pardon.
And it was
yes.
Josh Berry who won his first. I think it was a maiden win for Josh Berry, the short track ace, who won at Martinsville, and he's actually driving for Dale Earnhardt Jr. As well. So Josh Berry claiming the win in the Xfinity race at Martinsville. It's called Short Track Ace. Josh Berry there as well. He won the Xfinity race. Big win for him actually. It's his first ever career win. Second went the way. Not going to be very good at pronouncing a lot of these driver names. Ty Gibbs, I think, finished fourth. Austin Cindric was sixth in that one as well. He won a couple of races ago, I think, did Austin Cindric. So, yeah, the Xfinity Series race looks quite good, actually. I think the Cup Series is going to be the one we're all going to be looking out for later this evening. And Zach, Martinsville, very narrow circuit, isn't it?
Yeah, very narrow, short circuit. Slow. It's not like Bristol where it goes. You're basically on the throttle most of the time. You got a tight first corner, as well. You got a tight second corner. You got as well. It's going to be, pretty much a tight little circuit. It's not very fast. You can stack up quite easily on this circuit as well, Charlie. Very, very much. We've seen over the years, we've seen likes of Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon and Clint Boyer come together in turn one on the restart because of how because they couldn't work 3 wide basically. It took Johnson out, it took Gordon out, it took Boyer out. Just on the first corner of the final laps a few years ago in 2012. So that's how exciting it is there. If you want some last lap thrillers, you're going to get some. Let's just say that, Charlie. So yes, it's a battle of patience, but also a test as well, to see how far you can get through the field and how fast you can do it.
Yeah, as well. And I believe one of the drivers for this Cup Series has been sent to the back of the grid. I'm just getting that up now on here. I believe that is someone. Oh, Suarez. I think his surname.
Daniel Suarez.
Daniel Suarez. Yeah, I think he's been sent to the back of the grid.
I believe his crew chief got to I believe his crew chief got injected as well, Charlie, for the race for a technical infringement as well. So he's been ejected from this race and not allowed to take part further for this weekend. In NASCAR, that happens. You have a crew chief that can get injected from the weekend, and you're gone. Basically, that's gone in terms of that sort of thing. So that's the last thing that want to happen. But it does happen, unfortunately. But yeah, it happened, and he's at the back of the grid.
We're going to go for our predictions now for this race. I'm going to go for Martin Truex won last year. So I'm going to say potentially Denny Hamlin will win the Blue Emu Maximum Penalty 500. I've gone with him.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, fair enough, mate.
What's your prediction for this?
So,
what's your prediction?
Yeah, so at the moment, I would say, just trying to look at qualifying, where they go. So yeah, Logano was on pole, I think, for this one. Or was it?
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Oh, that's Martinville. Yeah. Interesting. William Byron is up there as well. But let's look at who could do well on here. Denny Hamlin, Joe Logano. I don't get they're called very experienced of this, but Chase Elliott as well, in fifth position. That's going to be very interesting, as well. So I'm looking forward to this, as well. So I'm going to put a bet on Elliott, at the moment, because I think he can go through the field like a steamroll. He can.
He needs a good result because he's struggling at the last few races. He's only won. Last win he had was Daytona, I think, in stage 2.
Yeah,
it's a long awaited win for him, and he is in the playoffs, I believe, isn't he?
Yeah. I think so. I think I got that wrong. Right. Yeah.
Because obviously they have the chase for this last 16 drivers, so they need to, obviously, because some of them don't take part like full time, so they need to have some drivers that have to win the stage. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they get on. So that will be live, I think, 4 p.m. Eastern time. The race will get underway very soon. We'll keep you updated on social media about the final results of the Blue Emu Maximum Pain Relief 500. Just to let you know, guys, 500 laps of Martinsville. That is how long the race is. So we'll keep you updated on that. Now, Zach, we're going to move on now. We're going to move on now. We've got a couple of features left to talk about. The first one we're going to talk about is Piers Morgan. Now, on Monday, he had an interview live on Tucker Carlson Today, and he spoke about the royal family. Now, Zach, what do you make of his interview with Tucker on Monday on Fox News?
Well, he's very interesting. He's a big old, he's an outspoken critic, of the royal family. He obviously didn't want to get cancelled, but he says he said in his little interview he refused to be bullied by the woke brigade. A very common insult, or well, it's not insult. It's a very common, little catnip that the some of the people who are on the right used. He said he's basically put into a position where he's asked to apologise, or he was said your position. He was basically said, well, I had to be apologised, or my position was untenable. He basically said he was going to be damned if he did apologise and damned if he didn't. He said he wasn't going to be bought into that. He also talked about his good friend Sharon Osbourne. She was also he complained that she was being bullied into apologising for defending Piers Morgan. That sort of thing. He kind of defended that sort of thing. If he can said that, if this happened to Donald Trump, then that sort of thing would have happened. I'm not sure. He said he's not a racist. He just doesn't believe her. Listen. I don't mind, and here's my view of this, right? Okay, I will say this again. Look, I don't mind Piers Morgan having an opinion. Okay, I disagree sometimes with what he says, but he's had the right to an opinion. I think the problem is sometimes that he doesn't realise his conduct's going all over the place. We're not, people may try to cancel him or whatever people call it for some of the opinions that he makes. I think there's only a certain amount of tolerance where in a society where, you can dismiss, mental health problems, that's the sort of thing, and suicidal things that, she probably said in that interview. But that's the sort of thing that goes over the line. I don't mind him having an opinion. I just don't want him to dismiss people as having suicidal thoughts, because that sort of thing not great. So I think he kind of realised he took over a bit. He went too far in some ways in that sort of department. I think he got a bit over TT about it. So I think that was the reason why he had to be let go in that department. But my opinion is this: I don't think we're just trying to cancel him. People will try, people will complain that the right cancels this and the left cancels that, and they're all woke and stuff like that. Listen, at the end of the day, there's some bizarre people come up with some bizarre things, and they could quite rightly get called out for it. I think Piers Morgan was just called out for it. But Piers Morgan's basically flows each side. Whatever you think about it, he gets attacked from every side of the angle. So I think to be fair, he would have upset one crowd or the other. I just think he could have shown his position, but it could have been a better conducted, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I don't mind his opinions about whether he believes Meghan Markle or not. I mean that's fine. That's totally fine. I just think it's the conduct, the way he announced it, and the way he demeaned it.
Yeah.
It's just a bit. I think it was the right reason. So
Yeah.
I think in some ways is cancel culture there. In some way, maybe potentially. Is it a big deal? My political stance is I don't think it's a big deal these days.
Yeah.
I don't. I think it's over exaggerating in some part.
Yeah, and Zach, whilst we're here, we are actually going to play some of this interview on the Globetrotter Newscast. So please, guys, if you're watching this, please have a listen to this interview. This is Piers Morgan on Tucker Carlson today on Fox News for his first interview since he left Good Morning Britain. Have a listen to this.
BBC ever. And we had trebled our ratings. So you would have thought people might be thanking me. Instead, I was basically corralled into a position where I was told you either got to apologise for effectively disbelieving Meghan Markle's version of events here, or your position is untenable and you have to leave. And my gut was, I was going to be damned if I was going to apologise for something that I believe. And I just wasn't going to go down that road. I've seen too many people, when they're bullied by the woke brigade, into apologising. We saw it with Sharon Osbourne. She was bullied into apologising for defending me against a disgusting slur that I'm a racist. And rather than the person who was accusing her apologising to me, Sharon Underwood, for accusing me falsely of being a racist, Sharon had to apologise for her passionate defence of me, and then she lost her job anyway. We saw recently the editor of Teen Vogue. Before she could even start, she apologised for years about stuff she tweeted as a 17-year-old kid. But that wasn't enough. So apologies don't ever get you anywhere. I don't believe Meghan Markle. Now, what I didn't know, and what was a fascinating thing to discover after I left, was that Meghan Markle, between the Monday and Tuesday, had made a personal complaint to the boss of ITV, Dame Carolyn McCall. I didn't know that. I was never told that. I don't know what pressure she was directly putting on, but she did, I know, personally contact her. I also know she had personally contacted, along with Prince Harry, Ofcom, which is a government regulatory body designed to regulate what we put out on news shows. So I was under attack from Miss Markle, both directly to my boss and to the government regulatory body, under attack to basically conform to her version of events. And I had to believe her. And if I didn't, I was a callous racist and I should be condemned and ultimately, as it turned out later that day, lose my job. And I think that's a pretty perilous slope, a journalist's job, which is to express skepticism about some of the more outlandish claims, like the secret wedding, like the story about Archie becoming a prince and so on, even down to small stuff like she'd never had any interest in the royals when there are pictures of her draped over Buckingham Palace railings when she was a teenager and so on. I should be able to be a journalist and question the veracity of those statements. And frankly, I should be allowed, in a democracy that values freedom of speech, I should be allowed to say, I'm sorry, I don't believe you. But I wasn't. I wasn't allowed to do that. It was Meghan's way and Meghan's narrative and Meghan's truth. That phrase was actually used by Oprah Winfrey. This is your truth. What does that mean? When do we get to your truth? This is the kind of defense, it was the kind of thing we would hear liberals attack Donald Trump for reinventing facts, for creating his own truth. But when Meghan Markle does it, the same liberals that attack Donald Trump cheer and applaud and say, this is her truth and it must be believed. And if you don't believe it, you're a racist. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not a racist. I just don't believe her.
And no one points out the kind of underlying irony is that here you have two of the most powerful people in the world, in Oprah Winfrey and Meghan Markle, both claiming to be victims. They're oppressed. They have more power than you. They got you fired, but you're oppressing them. The strong pretending to be weak in order to crush people below them. Does anyone notice this dynamic?
Well, it's completely absurd, frankly, and I've written about this regularly for the Daily Mail, about the ludicrous hypocrisy of this couple, who, by the way, contrary to what many Americans have been led to believe, the press coverage of these two right up to the wedding was completely over the top euphoric. Everyone in Britain was thrilled that finally we were having a non-white bride in the royal family. It hadn't happened. We were all very happy about this. I wrote about how wonderful it was on the wedding day. So this narrative that from the start she was bombarded with horrible, hateful, racist press coverage is another disingenuous load of nonsense, fueled by the Oprah Winfrey show, where they flashed up a series of headlines. But really where this leaves us is that you've got this concept that somehow Meghan Markle, who married into one of the richest, most privileged families in the world, and within a couple of years has gone back to her home in California, is living in an $11 million mansion, is doing all sorts of enormous deals with Netflix, Spotify, you name it. They're taking the checks, hundreds of millions we read. And how are they getting those, Tucker? They're getting them because they're the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They're getting them off their royal titles, the royal titles bestowed on them by the very institution that in that interview with Oprah Winfrey, they say they can't stand and is suffocating and traps them and so on and so on. Well, you can't have it both ways. If you really believe that way about the royal family and the monarchy, give up your titles, but they won't do that because it makes them too much money. So now you have these two oppressed people living in a mansion in California, earning hundreds of millions of dollars, in the middle of a pandemic that's killed nearly 3 million people, portraying themselves as the biggest victims in the world. But there are many people who don't have our platform, who are getting wiped out, eradicated, lives destroyed, careers ended, over the most ridiculous things. And it's got to stop, and it will only stop when the mass body of people who don't feel this way, who don't find themselves offended by absolutely everything, when they stand up and go, enough, I'm not going to let this happen. The power of free speech, as Winston Churchill said, some people think free speech is absolutely fine, right to the point they hear an opinion that they don't like, and then it's an outrage. But that's not what free speech is. Free speech is about listening to an outrageous opinion you don't agree with and being able to accept that somebody else doesn't feel like you. That's what free speech is.
Thank you there to Piers Morgan for that interview there with Tucker Carlson. Zach, what did you make of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, he did I mean, you know, he did exaggerate at some point. So I think, but yeah, I don't, you know, the point is, I don't disagree with the right to free speech. It's, I think there's the right to call you out on some of the speech. I just think as well, personally, that, you know, even if you do have the right to free speech, there is a certain limit of how acceptable it can be. You can't just go around, you know, being a racist and, you know, saying racist things and stupid things and bigotry and all that sort of thing. That's just not on. Okay, you can't use free speech to blame that as well, right? Okay, but so I think he gets a point, but then again, I think some of it is exaggerated. To be fair, now I you know, I don't know the business about Carol, the View and Carol and all that sort of things, and you know, I think there is. I think that the problem is though, is that I don't really agree with versions of how it's timelined. I mean, you know, Meghan Markle did get lots of positive and lovely press at first, yes, all the way to the wedding, and it just took a turn after that. I just think some of it was a little bit hypocritical, where, you know, I think, you know, depending, you get slagged off for what uniform you wear and how you would hold your tummy and stuff like that. Kate would get away with that when you were holding the baby bump, and yet Meghan Markle would get attacked for doing the same thing. So I think there is a bit of hypocrisy in there and a bit of bias and slant and stuff like that. Where racism is up to, I think it's up to people. I think there's an element of racism in there, I think, but I think some of the coverage has been cruel and unnecessary. But I don't agree necessarily with Piers Morgan's interpretation of that. I mean, you can disagree or agree with events. That's nothing wrong with that. I don't disagree with people who are having the right to do that. I just, one thing I do disagree on is just, making, going a bit OTT, deny mental health, suicide, issues. But that's the sort of thing that you cannot deny, Charlie. And when this is brought up, it's really serious. And it's just, it leads just to value problems if you just get picked on for something that, you admit and need to say out loud.
Yeah, I have to say, Zach, as well, this was my take on watching the interview. I have to say, watching the interview with Tucker and Piers, what I took away from it was that free speech is very, very important. Obviously, Winston Churchill was a massive icon of that, or during the Second World War when he led our country. I think people have the right to free speech. People have the right to give their opinion. Now, what I took away from that interview was that I think the royal family isn't racist. I think it's clear what Meghan, when the way Meghan treated the royal family was very unprofessional. I thought what she said about them was very unprofessional, as I mentioned earlier. But I think as well is that what Meghan said about Archie's skin colour, I think kind of made it very, very crazy when she had the interview with Oprah. I just saw what she said and I was like, really, why did she have to say that about her youngest son, about Archie's skin colour?
But here's the thing, though, Charlie. The way I saw it was this. Okay, is that if you're more, if you're more worried about what Archie's skin color looks like than compared to how healthy the baby is, if you're more worried about what his skin color looks like, then I'm sorry, that is racism. That's my view.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
And I think, I think at the end of the day, there's much more things to worry about than what you look like. Is the baby healthy? Are you preparing well for the baby? Are you getting these necessary toys and clothes and stuff like that? How's the actual human doing whilst with the baby inside them doing?
Yeah.
How is she doing? That's more important. I wouldn't judge. That's the first things I'll write about. The last thing I'll ever write about is how white, black that baby looked like. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's a baby at the end of the day. It's a beautiful baby that's living a human.
Yeah.
And whoever came out of that comment, I was pretty disgusting. But that's it at the end of the day.
It's crazy. It's just ridiculous. For an interview, that's pretty racist, I have to be honest with you. So you can watch the full interview on Tucker and Piers on YouTube. But we're going to end off, Zach, with one more feature. And I just want to talk about the actual feature of today's podcast, is how Parliament has changed during the coronavirus pandemic here in the UK. Now, Zach, over the last year, the House of Commons and the House of Lords have had to adapt to new ways of working. Just remember, Zach, around a year ago, that the House of Commons chamber was packed with about 600 MPs crammed in. Since then, things have changed dramatically, haven't they, for the UK Parliament?
Yeah, absolutely. They certainly have been. It's been a wild year for parliamentary business. We've had virtual participation. We've had mock congers, as we know, mid-year we had mock congers where they removed the virtual participation for proxy voting instead, and that caused the mock conger, and it was chaos basically at the time. But we also had debates as well that's done virtually, no less interventions. The speakership's been the same. Some PMQs have been done virtually as well, but should I say Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer have done their fair share from remotely and in person. And some areas like Westminster Hall had to be closed sometime, but that's back open again now. So we've lived through interesting times to comply with social distancing and COVID regulations because you don't want to pack hall. Now, how long will this last for? We're going to see this all again soon because we're going to due to have a Queen's speech in May. I have to say that'll be very interesting, somber for the Queen's speech to be happening a few months after her husband's a few days after her husband's death. Obviously, if we're going to see her on Saturday, this will be the first Queen's speech without the Duke of Edinburgh present, and it'll be a much less bigger, a much smaller Queen's speech than usual because there won't be the usual lords and peers packed in a room. Instead, it will just be mainly limited to the Queen and a few other MPs and peers. It'll just be a much less bigger procession than usual. So we'll see what that will be like soon. But I imagine quite soon, Charlie, that potentially we may see the chamber get bigger and bigger soon, as well. As COVID restrictions are lifted and all social contacts lifted, maybe we'll see then where we can fit more MPs in eventually. I don't know how soon that will happen because that will be up to the Speaker and the leader of the House, Jacob Rees-Mogg, and the someone who probably be on the negotiation team as well, probably be the leader of the House Business Committee as well. That will be Karen Brady, who probably sort that out as well. But I imagine we will start to see changes in the next couple of months. Maybe September we may see a bigger chamber. I consider virtual participation lasting now until July, until we get to a new parliament, and then in September we probably will be seeing party conferences again, with full crowds rather than virtual virtual conferences and all that sort of thing as well. So this may well start to see a different type of parliament as we go through the next few months. But for now, it's returning on Monday to pay tributes to the late great Philip himself, with Scottish, Northern Irish, Welsh, and British parliaments are all being recalled Monday. Keep in mind, we are in the Welsh and Scottish parliaments. We are in the middle of an election campaign now, and Parliament is being recalled, which wouldn't normally happen, but is anyway. But yes, I look, we look forward to seeing what Parliament looks like in the future as COVID restrictions are ever so lifted.
And Zach, as well, I mean, with Parliament over last year, lots of changes. You mentioned virtual participation, online voting was another one as well. The thing I've got to say is if Sir Lindsay Hall is going to want all MPs to return in the coming months as more COVID restrictions are going to ease, will there have to be potentially some mitigations in place? Would there have to be potentially testing and vaccination to get all of these MPs back in the chamber?
Oh, yeah, you'll probably have to do that sort of thing. That will have to be necessary. You never know. Parliament may become a place for passports if needs to be. If necessary, they might try out there to probably the disappointment of Mark Harper and Desmond Swain and the likes of that, and probably Steve Baker. But it may be required. We don't know. They may want to try it out there. And then potentially they could try a packed chamber or something like Prime Minister's questions or a major statement. And that could be trialled out. But we don't know, Charlie, at this rate. We don't know. It's something to consider about in the future, the testing, the vaccinations, maybe trial of passports on larger events such as PMQs, and less participation virtually. But we don't know how fast that will be, Charlie, to be fair. It may well be it takes some time. We may not. It's going to probably will take some time actually to think about.
It's going to be a cautious return to Parliament. And I know
it's going to be very cautious.
Yeah, I know there's been people concerned about a third wave of coronavirus, but I had read a tweet from Politics for All.
I don't see it like
government scientists admitted that it's very unlikely it's going to hit this summer.
I think
Zach, go on, Zach.
I think we've done so well with the vaccines that I can't see a third wave happening. I'm a very skeptic. Call me a skeptic. I've called me a third wave skeptic. I don't see it happening, in my opinion, because of the rate of the vaccination. We've done so well.
Over 32
so it's
million.
so it's probably unlikely, and we may well get a third wave. It depends how the opening up does, and then we lift all social contact limits. But it won't be to be fair, it doesn't look like it'll be as bad if we do, and we won't get even that much deaths, to be fair, because we would have vaccinated the most vulnerable. 99% of the most vulnerable have been vaccinated, by the way, in terms of the 32 million. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how Parliament evolves now. I mean, is there going to be some of the leftovers in the future that remain from the virtual, today's Parliament? Will some sort of virtual participation be needed in the future? I mean, it's a good idea. Can we modernise our voting system? That's the thing, though. We did have a digital vote for a little bit. And then Jacob Rees-Mogg decides to get rid of it. But I think that's something to look at in the future. I think we need to have serious conversations about that, because our Parliament is very, very old school, outdated compared to some of our other parliaments. Where if you look at the European parliaments, for example, a vote can be over within 30 seconds, basically, and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, we need to look at what ways to modernise Parliament in the future and learn from experience and what we did over the pandemic. There's some inspiration, I think, for going through that.
I know, Zach, as well. Parliament's been disinfected quite regularly throughout this as well. Like they've. I have to say a huge thanks to the team down at Westminster for making Parliament viable to MPs, because they've disinfected the chamber a lot just to keep this place open, to make keep MPs debating. This is a really good initiative, isn't it?
It is. It's an excellent initiative. It's good. That's important, and the staff there are the ones that keep everyone going. Keep everyone safe. And they should be commemorated for what they've done. There's a lot of staff out here, like the NHS, the key workers, also the workers never heroes, like the parliamentary staff as well, and who basically keep the day-to-day operations going. And if they didn't, without them, we wouldn't have a parliament. We would have been not sitting, basically, for a long time.
Yeah. And Zach, as well, Parliament did have to shut down, I think, for about 4 weeks last year because of the coronavirus outbreak with the lockdown that came in March. And that was a very difficult time for them to sort of convey, right, what we're going to do, what's Jacob Rees-Mogg going to implement to keep business going. And in the end, they came up with a virtual system, and it helped massively with MPs who couldn't physically attend and some who were clinically extremely vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the measures we had was extremely helpful and necessary at the time. We didn't want people risking getting COVID inside the House of Parliament. That would be the last thing that would have all seen wanted. So yeah, these measures have been. I think these measures have been necessary, and I've enjoyed seeing them. Actually, to be fair, as well.
Yeah. And Zach, as well, like when you go back to the chamber, it's like 50 MPs in there. It's so different from what it used to be. The way the debates are carried it's really strange seeing the chamber literally like very quiet compared to when it's bustling at Prime Minister's questions usually. You just get that sense of, when Prime Minister's questions is on usually, you get that sense of buzz, the sense of raucousness from MPs shouting.
That's the only thing that's been really. Yeah, that's the same. I mean, in some ways, you can look at it two ways, Charlie. You can look at a packed chamber and say, feel buzzed and feel excited and feel the atmosphere there. You feel how people are feeling from both sides, and then you whilst on the other side of that, you think, well, it's an irritating atmosphere. All they do is shout and swallow. Whereas you look at one in the pandemic, the current one so far, and it looks a bit more like, a lot more, less hectic, less, less rowdy. You can actually hear what the MPs are saying, that the debate and how the exchange is going. But at the same time as well, it doesn't have that buzz, that atmosphere. It doesn't feel, it feels less, feels like there's less of an atmosphere compared to, the pre-COVID days of Prime Minister Chris. So there's two ways to look at it, really, from both sides, Charlie. There will be those who miss the shoutiness of it, and those who don't. And it'll be interesting to see how that flips the terms in terms of when we get back to a packed chamber in whenever that happens again.
Yeah, Zach, as well, I have to say, just to sign off, I miss Parliament like it was. I really do. And I tell you what, when it does get back to some kind of normality and we see more MPs back in that chamber, I bet there's going to be a lot more spars and jabs that are going to be thrown out during these debates with those boxing. The gloves are off for MPs. It's going to be great. Yeah. I can't wait to see Parliament back again. I love watching debates myself in the UK Parliament, especially Prime Minister's questions. I always tune in on a Wednesday and watch the highlights. And I just see the MPs debate. It's a really amazing thing. Obviously, this Wednesday is going to probably be a little bit different because obviously of the death of Prince Philip. I know that there's going to be a lot of MPs that will be paying their respects to the Duke of Edinburgh. But I'm sure in the coming months ahead, it will be fantastic to get MPs back in that chamber and debating again. It will be properly amazing indeed. But that is it, guys. I'm going to sign off now for this podcast tonight. Thank you for listening to the Globetrotter Newscast here live on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And in the meantime, stay safe and take care. Thank you for listening, everyone. Take care.